Hey y'all, Scott here, and I love Super Smash Bros. So much I could scream. The fighting mechanics, the cast of characters, the collectibles, the clone characters, the online, big battlefield, this fucking menu, Smash Tour, Fire Emblem. Super Smash Bros., the most prolific crossover series on the planet, allowing you to pit Nintendo and gaming icons against each other. Mario vs. Link, Samus vs. Kirby, Brown vs. Board of Education, the fighting game series has blossomed into not just a game, but an event. Every time a new Smash Bros. Is announced, people go wild. Speculation runs rampant as to what new characters will be included, what stages will we fight on, what modes will be available. When a new character is revealed as a playable fighter, there's simply no game that can live up to that amount of excitement. It's so much more than being able to play as that character in Super Smash Bros. And pit them against other gaming legends. It basically solidifies that character's place in gaming history. That's the power of Super Smash Bros. Nowadays, we not only have dozens upon dozens of Nintendo characters and stages, but third-party ones as well. Online play, one of the biggest competitive scenes for any game out there, merchandise, and Street Smash. However, the Super Smash Bros. Series started all the way back in 1999 with a game oddly enough entitled Super Smash Bros., created by Masahiro Sakurai, the creator of everybody's favorite pink tumor-based platformer Kirby. It's immediately pretty obvious if you're a fan of both series that a lot of Kirby's design philosophy went into Smash Bros. Not only do both series have a few similarities in terms of controls and gameplay, but Kirby was always meant to be a game for everybody, easy and simple enough for newcomers to pick up and play, but with enough depth, charm, and fun to keep even the most seasoned of video game players around. Smash Bros. Is the same, but for fighting games. It's a fighting game that anybody can play without having to learn various button combinations or anything like other fighting games at the time. Games like Street Fighter required some specific button inputs to perform key moves, and thus would encourage newcomers to just mindlessly button mash. Smash Bros. Was much simpler to understand. You have two attack buttons, a standard attack and a special attack, and you can combine those with directions on the analog stick for different moves. You can jump, shield, grab, and that's fundamentally all you need to know. That makes it easy for many to understand, but if you truly want to get good, you're going to have to think about when and where to pull off a specific move, whether you're in the air or not, whether a special attack or standard attack would be more effective. Super Smash Bros. Thankfully doesn't sacrifice depth for simplicity, and it's safe to say that Sakurai succeeded in terms of a simple to learn, hard to master fighting game. It was originally pitched as Dragon King the fighting game, with some mannequins as the characters. Sakurai wanted the game to have instantly recognizable and likable characters, thus he wanted to include the wide array of Nintendo All-Stars. His colleague who coded the prototype, Satoru Iwata, buttered up Shigeru Miyamoto on the concept of using characters like Mario in the game, in which he was initially hesitant on the idea. Regardless of getting permission first, Sakurai threw together another prototype of the game featuring Mario, Donkey Kong, Samus, and Fox fighting, showed it to the Nintendo higher-ups, and the game we know of today was officially greenlit. The game was released in early 1999 in Japan and the rest of the world throughout the year, so now let's get into the full game itself. Super Smash Bros. Kicks things off with an intro that tells you everything you need to know. Some kid who's a disembodied hand is playing with his Nintendo dolls, which range from, alright, yeah, a Mario toy, to, how the fuck did you get a Captain Falcon doll? The concept of the characters in Super Smash Bros. Being toys has been carried on throughout the series' life, but it's not shoved in your face. It's a fact that makes everybody go, oh yeah, that's right, rather than being the focal point of it all. To me, it always felt like a workaround for a grown man to beat the piss out of some yellow rat without the ESRB shaking their fists furiously at the game. This is the only Smash Bros. In which they're dolls though. Future games feature the characters as trophies instead. We then go into this crazy minute-long slap in the face to anybody that ever doubted the concept of Smash Bros. I always liked the section of the opening with Mario and Kirby at a standoff, a moment in which every Nintendo fan said, oh shit. The characters clash together, we're given a preview of 4 unlockable characters, and then, now that's what I like to call an ambiguous logo. A logo that's been the main emblem of the Smash Bros. Series since this very moment. It's synonymous with Smash Bros. At this point, but what does it mean? According to Sakurai himself, the cross symbolizes the crossover of characters, with the 4 sections representing the 4-player multiplayer. Or at least that's what this napkin I found at Arby's tells me. After the logo appears, we're greeted to a hearty and with that, a legend was born. The gameplay of Smash Bros. Is different from other fighting games, but incredibly easy to comprehend. You and up to 3 other players are on a stage, get knocked off the stage, you lose a stock. The more damage you take, the easier it is to get knocked off. The last fighter standing, or the one with the most knockouts within the time limit, reigns supreme. Elements of the stages can interfere with the fight. Items randomly scatter across the battlefield. If you choose to not turn them off completely, it becomes effing nuts. Before we blast into a match, we're graded to a character selection. 8 fighters playable from the get-go, 4 more pummeling in after playing the single-player modes under certain conditions. Starting roster screams Nintendo, there's no debating that. Everybody has purpose here, and nobody feels like an odd inclusion. But then when we take into consideration the 4 unlockable ones, whoa. I mean, Luigi, yeah, he makes sense to be in a Smash game. Jigglypuff, a Pokemon with popularity, but in terms of being included in the first Smash Bros. Game, who's considered to be a big enough Nintendo character to be represented as 1/12 of them? And then we have Captain Falcon and Ness. Who the fuck? Captain Falcon and Ness are much more obscure than the other characters, but hey, they were still a part of series that were considered Nintendo staples. Sure, Captain Falcon was like the least recognizable part of F-Zero at the time, and Ness was from a cult classic RPG, but still, you gotta have the more obscure characters in your fighting game. The unlockables seem to be included due to ease of programming, like Luigi's just a straight up clone of Mario, Jigglypuff repurposed Kirby's model, Captain Falcon seems to be repurposing the original models from the Dragon King prototype, and Ness is a mystery. He didn't seem easier to program compared to the other characters. Whatever, I'm happy he's here. And overall, the roster of Smash Bros. 64 has the lowest percentage of Scott's not happy with this Smash Bros. Roster of the entire series. There's really no filler, no oversaturation of any series, everything makes sense and blends together perfectly here. So I like the roster, but how do the characters play? The Smash Bros. Series nowadays has always impressed me with how creatively they turn a character into a fighter, throwing in as many references and callbacks to their series origins as possible. A character in Smash truly feels like you're playing that character. Smash 64, not as much. You have a fair amount with moves that correlate with their games and what they've done in the past, and then you have your typical everyday Donkey Kong where it feels like the developer said, oh shit, he has arms, we can make a moveset based around that. Not as much fan service as other games. Loads of moves that were just made up for Smash Brothers and have no origin based on the character's games. It's why by the time we get to Smash Brothers for 3DS and Wii U, you can definitely tell who's been in the series the longest. While the new characters have incredibly creative and unique playstyles, Donkey Kong has some punch thing. If you go down to the data section and click on characters, we can see quick little bios on everybody, plus see what games they hailed from, which is a precursor to the trophy system in future games. I have to say, I always felt like the works section picked some random honkin' games for each character. Like it says Mario is from Super Mario Bros., alright, that makes sense. Super Mario Kart, alright, again a solid inclusion. And Mario Kart 64. Why 2 Mario Kart games? Wouldn't it have made more sense to include Mario 3, World, 64? I'm getting angsty just thinking about it. Also, Pikachu has a vastly different bio compared to the other characters, an excerpt from the Pokédex. That would be fine, but the other Pokemon in the game, Jigglypuff, has an actual bio. It feels like they almost forgot Pikachu and quickly slammed this in there. Alright, enough of the dawdle sesh. Let's get into a match and oh god, this feels wacky. Not bad, it's just, in my opinion, it doesn't feel as good and definitely a bit off compared to the other games in the franchise. Whenever I'm off the stage, man, I start fidgeting in my seat like it's so unnerving. Always feels like it's up in the air whether I'm gonna die or not. Also, look at this. Those are definitely polygons, there's no doubt about that. It's obviously the very first in the series, but it's still Smash Brothers. The multiplayer monsoon we know of today, and you can still garner quite a bit of fun out of this sucker. Items randomly appear on the battlefield, and these can be loads of fun. There's not a ton in the game, but we have Pokeballs, Bob-ombs, the hammer from Donkey Kong, and the iconic home run bat. If you're a total prude, you can turn off the items, which I prefer doing in the Smash games I'm actually somewhat competent at, but for Smash 64, crank those bad boys up, man. I fucking blow at this game. I crave a good Maxim Tomato from time to time. Of course, none of this matters if the stages are lame-o, and thankfully Smash 64 has nothing but decent to great stages. None of them are annoying to play on for me, none of them have bad layouts. They all have good, fun designs with a few stage hazards here and there that you can totally avoid if you know what you're doing. Since there's only 9, might as well go through them all. Peach's Castle, not one of my favorites. I always found the design of this one to be really odd. So we're above Peach's castle and we're battling on top of a mishmash of geometry. I guess canonically, since the characters are toys, the stages are built out of random objects from the child's room. The intro shows us off, I guess. I don't know, I don't want to dive too deep into this. Congo Jungle, a fun one. Don't have much to add here. Hyrule Castle, definitely preferred to the Peaches variety. I actually really like this stage. It has loads of fun areas to duke it out in. I just think the layout looks really odd. It looks super rudimentary even for the Nintendo 64. Planet Zebes, it's alright. The acid comes up and spells disaster to those who can't grasp the concept of jumping. Yoshi's Island, really simple but enjoyable. Dreamland, another incredibly simple one. Wispy Woods here blows either left or right from time to time, but it rarely affects the fight. Sector Z, a really fun stage. I love that you can traverse the entirety of the Great Fox. Another ship comes down and blasts the piss out of you sometime though. What unfortunate. Saffron City, what a stage. You can easily just fight on the standard platforms if you don't want any stage interferences, or you can hop over to this little doorway and these nightmares rain on the parade. You can also unlock the Mushroom Kingdom stage based off of the original Super Mario Bros. A lot of really solid stages here. Now I've talked as much about the multiplayer of this game as I possibly could have, which you can play alongside computer-controlled opponents if that lifestyle interests you, but what if you want to play Smash Brothers by yourself? Well, let's mosey on over to the single-player department. As you can see here, we have a wide variety of mode. There's one single-player mode here, and it's what the series would later call Classic Mode. A series of fights and mini-games testing your strength. The problem with this mode is that the fights are the exact same every time. The first fight is with Link. You fight a giant Donkey Kong, a team of Kirbys, the Mario Brothers, a target test, board the platforms, race to the finish. It never changes. Even after unlocking characters, it doesn't change things up. Future games bring in randomization, keeping this mode much fresher each playthrough. The target test and board the platforms minigames are different for each character, which that deserves a solid neat. The final few bouts are against Metal Mario, which blows. The Fighting Polygon team, which are mysterious figures we don't know the origin of, / that's fucking Yoshi, dude. They're just messed up models of all the characters in the game. And then, Master Hand, the one behind all of this, the main boss of the series, and then after defeat, we get this little ditty. Thanks, that truly makes me feel triumphant. Go, credits go, and repeat. Speaking of the music, it's alright. You get a lot of iconic tracks, but with that Nintendo 64-tastic sound. I gotta be honest, there's not much else I can say about this one. It's more so interesting to look back on rather than play nowadays. That's not to say it's a bad game, far from it. It's just that we have far better and more accessible Smash Brothers games to play nowadays, and with every entry in the series expanding upon the concept of the first game and being a better version of this game, there's not much reason to go back to Smash Brothers on the Nintendo 64, outside of seeing where it all began or simply to waste an afternoon. After a few hours, you've basically seen everything this one has to offer. In the end, I have so much respect for this entry, and the multiplayer is still fun to this day. Single player wise, it doesn't have too much going on, but so did other fighting games at the time. It's passable. Play it to see where it all started, but you're better off playing the games that came after it. They just all improved upon the foundation and offered more refined gameplay. But they didn't have this amazing commercial. Look at this thing. Magnificent. So to answer the question on everybody's mind, are you wrong for preferring Smash 64 to every game after it? Yeah.